Welcome to The Economy Magazine. I'm Natalie Ehrlich here with the day's global economic highlights. Coming up, we take you to Egypt, where the new government has raised the price of fuel sharply. South Sudan, everyday people don't just face a brutal civil war, but also a ravaged economy. And in Brazil, after much upset over the World Cup, local vendors are now getting a financial boost. Well, we do start now in the Far East. Asian stocks dip Monday as investors look ahead now to U.S. corporate earnings. The region's benchmark index traded just below its highest level in 6 years. Aeon, the supermarket operator, sank 5.1% in Tokyo. Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering slid 4.5% in Seoul. And TPK Holding, a maker of computer screens, fell 4.5% in Taipei. Well, Christine Lagarde, head of the International Monetary Fund, hinted that the institution may now cut its global growth forecasts, urging world governments to boost investments in infrastructure, education, as well as health, in addition to usual central bank efforts to accelerate growth. Now, her comments come ahead of the IMF's next forecast, set for publication just later this month. In April, the fund predicted the global economy would expand by 3.6% just this year and 3.9% in 2015. Well, German Chancellor Angela Merkel paid a visit now to the Chinese premier Monday following bilateral trade talks between the two countries. It is Merkel's 7th visit to China since taking office in 2005. This time, she's accompanied by a German business delegation. And according to German media, deals expected to emerge from this visit include a joint venture between German airliner Lufthansa as well as Air China. In his first budget as India's newly elected Prime Minister, Narendra Modi is said to be looking to raise up to a record $11.7 billion in asset sales. In May, Narendra's promise to deliver growth as well as jobs won him India's biggest election mandate in 3 decades. Since taking office, Indian stocks have enjoyed a so-called Modi boom, rallying 23% so far this year.
I think the main theme would be more about consolidation, which means really trying to balance income and expenditure so that the budget deficit comes down to about 4% or so.
Despite recent disappointing GDP numbers for Cuba, the country's president, Raul Castro, is taking a cautious stance on market-oriented reforms, telling Parliament that economic reforms will be gradual. Well, last year, Cuba's economy grew 2.7%, below its official target of 3.6%.
During the first semester, the Cuban economy maintained discrete growth. The gross domestic product grew by 0.6%, which signals a deceleration in the rhythm of the growth, which is due to unfulfilling export goals, instances of climatological conditions, as well as the persistence of insufficient advances in economic management.
And New York investment house Kushner Group, headed by the son-in-law of real estate mogul Donald Trump, is set now to buy a 47% stake in Israeli insurer Phoenix Holdings. Delek Group, which currently controls the share, has agreed to sell for 1.7 billion shekels, or $497 billion. Now, Jared Kushner, who heads the Kushner Group, has cited his confidence in the Israeli economy as a reason behind this investment. Egypt's new government is now upping fuel prices sharply, a move which it says is meant to shore up more cash now for the state budget. Here's the story.
Fuel prices in Egypt have been raised severely as part of an austerity plan by ex-army chief and newly elected President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to curb what is seen as a ballooning subsidy system and to reduce the deficit to 10% of GDP. The economy has been uneasy over the last 3 years of unrest that has scared away both tourists and foreign investors. Prime Minister Ibrahim Maklab said that the cuts are meant to put subsidies in areas that will help more poor people.
This government is not against the poor people. This government is working on fixing things. Go and look at the condition our hospitals are in. Fuel and electricity subsidies cost the country 51 billion Egyptian pounds. Keep in mind that Egypt doesn't have those 51 billion. We were going to borrow it with interest, and we wouldn't have been able to pay it back.
The cuts have raised the price of 92-octane gasoline about 10 cents U.S. from 26 cents to 36 cents, according to the official MENA news agency. The price of diesel also went up 10 cents from 15 to 25 cents. In a country where approximately 40% of the over 85 million people live around the poverty line, it's a significant price hike. The cut sent shockwaves throughout taxi driving and transport worker communities who blocked roads Friday night in Ismailia near the Suez Canal.
The lower class are the people the most affected by this decision. By increasing the price of gas, you increase the price of transportation. Everything will cost more, and they are not receiving anything in return.
Currently, the government spends more than 30% of their budget on fuel and food subsidies. Egyptian media reported that the budget for the current fiscal year has factored in a fuel subsidy cut of more than $6 billion, bringing fuel spending to just under $14 billion. The Egyptian government also aims to set up a capital gains tax and steadily raise electricity prices over the next 5 years.
South Sudan marks its third anniversary now of independence, but as the spiral of violence there continues in the war-ravaged country, so does its economy. Well, this next report explains how civil war has affected everyday people just looking to make a living.
On Juba's dusty streets, giant posters celebrate the third anniversary of South Sudan's independence. But many people in the world's newest country are in no mood to cheer. In nearby Tompane camp, some 15,000 internally displaced people live in makeshift tents, fetching water from tanker trucks and wading through mud. They are just a fraction of the 1.5 million people displaced by the civil war that erupted here in December. Before the conflict, Abraham Tatmayak was studying for a degree in biology. Now, his dreams are dashed, and his daily life is just about survival.
The overcrowding is one condition that we are facing now. And then another condition, the way of living. We are not feeling safe. There are so many diseases because we are living under the ground, and there is the rain.
Thousands of people have been killed in the conflict between South Sudan's first president, Salva Kiir, and his former vice president, now turned rebel leader, Riek Machar. Human rights groups say that both sides have committed widespread atrocities, and the country is now at the top of the Fragile States Index. The United Nations is building several new sites to house the almost 100,000 displaced civilians seeking shelter on their bases. And to make matters much worse, aid agencies warn of imminent famine if they don't receive massive funding for food aid. The Red Cross has begun its first airdrops from nearly 2 decades, hoping to reach hundreds of thousands of starving people.
There are alarming signs there. There is malnutrition, especially amongst the kids in sensitive areas. So if that level of assistance cannot be maintained and increased in the next month, it is well likely that the food insecurity will become rather dramatic.
Peace talks in Ethiopia have so far failed to bridge the gap or implement a lasting ceasefire. The conflict, which started as a political row between Kiir and his former deputy, has taken on a brutal ethnic dimension, with Machar's Noor tribe pitted against the Dinka community that is loosely tied to Kiir. It's a far cry from the euphoria of 3 years ago, when both men pledged to build a strong, united, and prosperous nation after a decades-long fight for independence from Sudan.
It was powerful. People had a sense of having won the war that they fought for many years. So contrast that with what happened on the 15th of December, where the sense of togetherness, the sense of being victorious, the sense of living peacefully without fear in your own country, that was changed drastically.
From joy and hope to desperation, and now possibly starvation, South Sudan's promising future is long gone, and many are hoping its leaders will at last step back from the brink of catastrophe.
The World Cup in Brazil has sparked much protest among civilians who say the government has spent just too much on the games and not enough on health and education. Now, there's certainly no shortage of controversy there, and this next report shows us that there's also no shortage of business.
Fortaleza in northeastern Brazil will have hosted 6 matches by the end of the World Cup, twice welcoming the home side. And every time the Castelao Stadium fills its 64,000 seats, restaurants in the area see their revenues flourish. José Alexander de Souza owns a small cafe on the main avenue near the stadium.
Before the World Cup, I would make around $1,800 a month. And now with the World Cup, I'm making nearly double that.
De Souza benefits from Crédit Amigo, a microcredit program launched 16 years ago by the government-controlled regional development bank, Banco do Nordeste. The program is aimed at helping people on low incomes develop their business and now has nearly 3,000 clients. This, combined with the money generated by the millions of tourists coming for the tournament, means some Brazilians here have had a very positive World Cup experience. They don't share the views of protesters who've taken to the streets for the past year, complaining that the $11 billion cost of hosting the tournament could have been better spent.
From what we've seen here, it's the opposite. Many people said that we shouldn't host the World Cup, that there would be a lot of protests, but we've seen that all Brazilians have got into the World Cup spirit. They're all cheering for Brazil. And tourists are warmly received here because Brazilians are people who know how to welcome people very well.
The impact of the World Cup can even be seen in São Gonçalo do Amarante, a tiny village an hour and a half outside Fortaleza. Here, 70 women, also part of the microcredit program, worked for 4 months to knit 83 decorations in the colors of each country taking part in the World Cup. Each woman will make 500 reais from the project, or $225, some $90 more than they would normally earn in a month. It's less than the country's minimum wage, but still a lot of money for these women who'd otherwise be unemployed.
It's very good for all of us. We make money every day, working with a lot of energy and courage. It's very good. It's therapeutic for us.
Opinions remain divided on whether Brazil will ultimately benefit financially from hosting the tournament. Some studies show that the World Cup and the Olympic Games in 2016 will create 3.6 million jobs and add 4 points to the country's GDP. But others argue that given weak economic growth since 2011, the impact on Brazil's economy will be insignificant.
And now for a discussion on various articles collected just for you in Media Watch with Daniel Roth. Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for joining us. So what do you have for us today?
Well, the first one is a news story that actually got lost somewhere in the last few weeks. Democracy Now! Picked this up a couple of weeks ago, and it's a really interesting story. Apparently, WikiLeaks leaked some important information about a huge economic agreement between 50 countries, which represent 68% of global services, the economy of global services. And this is something called TISA, and it basically is a pact that WikiLeaks uncovered that says all of the countries that are a part of this cannot regulate their financial industries. They can't put in more regulations than they have, and they may in fact have to deregulate in some areas that they've regulated, particularly over the last few years since the crisis of 2007-2008. Now, this is something that was going to be kept secret. It said that the details of the pact wouldn't be released for 5 years after signing the pact. So it's kind of a little bit scary stuff that we're finding out from Democracy Now!
Well, why is this so significant? I mean, would it potentially reverse some of the gains that we've seen in terms of regulation post-financial crisis?
It very well could. So in the report that I was reading, they explained that the language is very loose. It's very open language that talks about deregulation as a possible reaction to certain measures that governments that ratify the agreement would have to take. So this could take regulation back to the mid-90s, you know, the bastion of neoliberalism, when deregulation was really getting its first kicks. So it's entirely possible that this kind of deregulation could take us back to situations that led to the crisis in the first place. And it's indicative of what may be in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Transatlantic Free Trade Agreement, things that people are kind of looking for clues as to what is the international community moving towards on an economic front.
Did they name any specific countries there?
No, so all of the details are under wraps right now, and it's very interesting. There's not a lot known and obviously not a lot reported on. This came on Democracy Now!, which is known for sort of picking up these kinds of stories that often fall through the cracks.
Well, thank you so much for highlighting this very important story. Well, that does wrap up our economic coverage for now. Join us again tomorrow, same time, same place. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Thank you very much for watching.